Shattering Glass by Gail Giles. Chapter 1. Simon Glass was easy to hate. I never knew exactly why. There was too much to pick from. I guess really we each hated him for a different reason, but we didn't realize it until the day we killed him. Simon was textbook geek. Skin like the underside of a toad and mushy fat. His pants were too short and his zipper gapped about an inch from the top, and his Fruit of the Looms rode up over his pants and back because he tucked his shirt into his tidy whities. He had a plastic pocket protector, no joke, crammed with about a dozen pens and a calculator. It was retro cool in our part of Texas to wear loafers or topsider boat shoes without socks, but Simon wore crepe soled black lace up wingtips. We were all hanging in the commons before school. Coop, as usual, was copying my English notes. Coop was our team star linebacker, and English wasn't exactly his native tongue. 60% of Coop's vocabulary consisted of the word yo. The other 40% was divided between no way man and I don't know. Evolution sort of passed Coop by. The Bobster boasted of doing the wild thing with his latest girlfriend. Bob was more blow than go, and we all knew it. But the guy was fun and funny and occasionally could hone in on something the rest of us missed. Besides, it was easier to put up with bullshit than his blowouts. I had one ear cocked to Bobster while I read the big words to Coop. Rob leaned against the table watching the girls watch him. He was indifferent. The girls were not. Last year, Rob Haynes transferred to B Vale from out of state. Within minutes, every girl in school was tongue hung in lust, and within days he had snatched the popularity crown off Lance Ansley's head. There hadn't been a close contender since. Looks wise, Rob wasn't lacking, but that wasn't the whole story. He wore confidence like the rest of us wore favorite sweatshirts. Magnetism like Rob's can't be earned. When he walked into a room, there was a jolt and all eyes turned his way. No one noticed that his nose was big and he wasn't all that tall. His blue eyes and big smile hypnotized one and all. Rob would flash his grin and nobody with the pulse had a chance. Girls squirmed, teachers twitched, and everyone scuffled to be first in line to give Rob whatever he wanted. And Rob let them. Once I asked Bobster's girlfriend of the minute what was Rob's attraction. She got all gooey and sighed. He looks right into your eyes, and for a minute you're beautiful, the most important person in the world. Rob's girl gazing was interrupted by a shout from Lance Ansley. Hey, Glass! Rob and I looked up to see Simon Glass bubbling his way between tables. Rob thought Lance was as useful as Crotchage. Since Ansley's vocabulary was as limited as his imagination, his habit was calling anyone in target range faggot. Rob tensed visibly every time, and I knew that one day he'd take Lance down. Glass, I want to ask you something, Lance shouted above the pack. Simon stopped, confused by Lance's attention. Surely he suspected something, but the guy was so pitifully eager. He looked around as if someone else named Glass stood behind him. He squirmed, probably about to piss his double knit pants, happy to be hailed by one of B Vale's finest. Shambling forward like a friendly seal, he nodded at Lance. What do you need to know? Lance surveyed the herd of goat ropers nearby, the goths and tweakers, hanging on the edges like ravens at a dump site. The bangers and the preps pushed in close. Testosterone surrounded Lance like swamp gas. Standing hip-shot and relaxed, he kept his face turned slightly away from Simon. Yeah, Glass, I got a question about your shirt. Simon's thick eyebrows bunched together like a caterpillar. He smoothed his shirt. What what about my shirt? I'm curious. Do you tuck your shirt into your jock so it's handy to wipe your ass or what? A few in the Roper mob hooted. Simon gulped. Lance continued. That shirt tail was hanging there close at hand. The laughter crossed Case now. The Goths only smiled, of course, but slapped one another on the back and jeered at Simon, glad that this time anyway they weren't the object of ridicule. Glass's face was crimson, and he backed away from Lance in a rush to escape. Dave Eastland stuck out one foot, snagging Simon's heels. His head and shoulders went down, and his feet flew up. He crashed and burned. Coop shook his head. Ansley's an asshole, he muttered. He closed his books and left. Later, Bob said to Rob and me and followed Coop. Simon lurched to his knees. As he put his hands on the floor and pushed himself up, his pocket protector spilled its contents. Pen and pencils tumbled away, and the calculator's AAA batteries scattered in all directions. "Oh no," Simon wailed. Two or three picked up the cue. "Oh no," they shrieked. "Oh no." The cry picked up voices and decibels as it rolled across the room. Glass crawled on hands and knees, clutching at the wayward batteries and pens. Jeff Barnett stood, a battery resting against his shoe. As Simon reached for it, Barnett kicked, sending the AAA spinning across the floor. Simon reached for a pencil, and a foot stamped down and snapped it. Simon looked up into Lance's face. "Sorry, Glass," he leered. "Or should I say," he pitched his voice into a squeaky falsetto, "oh no." Simon sighed and hung his head, defeated. Lance leaned over and grabbed the exposed elastic band of Glass's underwear. He stretched it out, then released. The band snapped against Simon's crack just as the bell shrieked. As the crowd moved on, one or two of them took a swipe at Simon's pens, scattering them to the far ends of the commons. Lance picked up the calculator's plastic back and flipped it with the backhanded frisbee toss into a garbage can. "Have a good day, Glass." He ambled off, grinning and strutting for his admirers in the crowded hall. Rob still leaned against the table. He watched Lance leave, then turned to watch Simon gather his nerd tools and haul up his pants. He leaned down and retrieved one of Simon's pens. He strode to Glass and handed it to him. "You missed this one," he said. Simon wouldn't take the pen. Rob slid it into Glass's shirt pocket. He turned away and jerked his chin in a signal for us to leave. That was so Rob. While his magnetism alone was more than enough to ensure high school deification, he'd still go out of his way to be nice to someone who wasn't even a blip on the useful radar. The nobodies and the somebodies all liked him for it. "He blew it," Rob said, smiling faintly. "What do you expect out of Glass?" I said. He put his hand on my shoulder. "Not Glass, Lance."